It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Good morning, America. My name is Michael Evans, and you're listening to America's Voice Now. Our goal is to educate, inform, motivate, and activate. The reason I say that is because America is asleep at the switch. And the train is run away. Christie came out yesterday, New Jersey governor, my old stomping ground. And he has a lot of nerve. He wants to run for president. And in one breath, he's calling himself a conservative. But I want you to listen to his comments here. And then you decide for yourself what Mr. Christie is really all about.
Libertarianism that's going through both parties right now and making big headlines, I think is a very dangerous thought.
Senator Rand Paul, for example?
Well, listen, you can name any number of...
Let me start that again.
...strain of libertarianism that's going through both parties right now and making big headlines, I think is a very dangerous thought.
The strain of libertarianism that's going through both parties right now is dangerous. Really? You've got to be kidding me. A guy who purports and carries himself to be a conservative decries libertarianism as dangerous? Holy smoke.
Senator Rand Paul, for example?
Well, listen, you can name any number of people who've engaged in it, and he's one of them. I mean, these esoteric, intellectual debates, I want them to come to New Jersey and sit across from the widows and the orphans and have that conversation.
So in true liberal progressive fashion, he drops rational thought, critical thinking skills, and descends immediately into emotion. So Rand Paul and any number of other people is one of them. And what he wants them to do is come down and sit down across from a widow or a homeless person in New Jersey to hear their side of the issue. Does that sound like the type of conservative thought you agree with? Not me. If that's conservatism, I don't want any part of it. Because instead of using the concept of rational thought, instead of utilizing critical thinking skills, instead of utilizing facts, he descends immediately into the emotional. What that tells me is that this man doesn't have the capability or the intellectual honesty to admit what the truth is. That this administration is full of nothing other than failed policies, gangland thuggery-style government that is might makes right, that we are operating completely outside the constitutional framework and boundaries under gang rule. This is Chicago politics at its worst. This is oligarchian. 535 people and some 35 other cabinet members combined with a president, 9 justices, are ripping this country apart. not to mention millions of ideologues underneath them all. But a fish always stinks from the head down.
And they won't, because that's a much tougher conversation to have.
That's a tougher conversation to have with a couple of widows and some homeless people after a storm in New Jersey. That's not a tougher conversation to have. The simple truth is, if they'd stay out of everybody's pocketbook, kitchen, bathroom, bedroom, if they'd stay out of everybody's business, industry, the people out there in this nation would have a lot more money in their pockets, and they'd be a lot more generous and liberal with who they shower it upon, willingly, not by force of police arms. You see, any time that you are forced to contribute, that's theft. When you do it willingly, that's a gift. It's charity. But it's not charity when the government takes it from you and throws it in a kit bag with the idea that we'll find somebody to spend it on. Mr. Christie, I declare you to be a danger to the Republic. I declare you to be operating in open and blatant violation of your oath of office. I call you a traitor because you obviously have no concept of the rule of law. You have no concept of what your oath means. You have no concept of what the Constitution entails, what it's meant to do, that it's meant to be a guideline for the operation of this country. And you are a East Coast liberal who wraps himself in a conservative flag and declares himself to be something other than what he is. I call that a wolf in sheep's clothing. And you, sir, should be ashamed of yourself. College Republicans were denied entry at the University of Central Missouri on Wednesday when Obama went there for an event and a speech. They were denied entry for security reasons and for the president's protection. I want you to hear that again. I want you to understand its implication. Missouri College Republican State Treasurer Courtney Scott told Campus Reform on Thursday, that's an e-magazine, on Thursday, that an unidentified police officer told the group they were barred from the event, quote, for security reasons and for the president's protection. Really? Are you telling me that a group of college Republicans went there to hear the president speak and were denied access because they were Republicans? If that doesn't smell of Nazism, I don't know what does. Perhaps they should have just hung a star on them and marked them as Juden. You see, it's no different. Fascism always works in the same way. You find a particular group, you demonize them, you castigate them, you put them out there in the public as if they are lepers, unclean. You bar them from having access to the functions of government. You constantly berate them in the public eye. You get the low information, the uninformed, and the intellectually dishonest to side with you, and the hate begins to build. This administration, so desperate to talk about hate crimes, is guilty of the same thing. In fact, I would garner a guess that if you were to look up the activities and the actions of this administration, and the activities and the activities of ideological progressives in general as a collective group, they are far more guilty of the quote-unquote hate crime than the average American or the conservative or the patriot. Yet they're the first to spout and scream, hate crime, but only when it's related to some part of their ideology that operates or impugns everyone else's rights under the Constitution, under the laws of nature, under natural law, God's law. You see, government doesn't give us our rights to free speech, self-protection. Government doesn't grant anything. Those are natural rights that you are born with, irrespective of whether you live here or in Argentina or Shanghai or France or Iceland. See, those are natural rights that follow the laws of nature, like the laws of physics. When you release an apple, it falls to the ground. There's something in play called gravity. When you are born and you are a sentient human being, you have the right to free speech, to self-protection. You have the right to defend yourself and your family. You have the right to free thought. You have the right to redress your grievances with your government. You have the right to hear what your government has to say so you know how to couch an argument to redress your grievances. I find it highly implausible that 5 or 6 college students sitting in an auditorium listening to the tyrant-in-chief berate America would be a security risk towards the president's safety. Why weren't they just frisked? Why weren't they metal detect scanned? I'm sure everyone else was also. No one gets in to see the Great Oz, no how, not without going through mechanical scanners, X-ray scanners. So tell me, how did 5 or 6 college students get banned from hearing the tyrant-in-chief? The student said, I hate to make allegations, but it was just very suspicious that we were not allowed in. She was disappointed she was unable to hear President Obama speak in person. Quote, regardless of one's political party, it would have been a great opportunity to hear from the president. I would never want to turn down that opportunity, and I'm disappointed we didn't get to see him in person. A spokesman for the university was unavailable for comment. How convenient. Juden, unclean, cast out, stay away. The dangerous signs of fascism. It's all about hate crime. It's all about hate. From those who sit and constantly raise the stress card of hate they are the most guilty of its violation. But that's just good advice from Cloward and Piven. That's just good advice from Saul Alinsky. See, that's the problem, ladies and gentlemen. Our nation is so close to the end, so close to dissolution, that now you have the inmates running the asylum. Speaking of inmates and asylums, the Department of Homeland Security has chosen its new home. It's the St. Elizabeth's Hospital in Washington, D.C. It's a sprawling 176-acre campus with a hospital on there that was for the criminally insane. And I find that accurately ironic. They've put a budget together of $4.5 billion. They're already $1 billion overdue, or over their budget. They're years and years away. They anticipate it will take them until 2026 to put the new DHS/KGB headquarters together. And it's being built to operate in parallel with the world's largest hard drive being built in Utah by the NSA, where they can build and shuttle information back and forth between the new criminally insane headquarters and Utah. What information, you ask? Well, the dossiers they're building on every American, or didn't you know? The phone calls they're saving from you. The ones they're not listening to yet. They're just storing them, along with the metadata. So not only will they be able to pull up the metadata to say, well, on July 3rd, he made a phone call at 3:03 p.m., and it ended at 3:13 p.m., and who he called, and where both the receiving and the sending party were. But if for any reason they decide that they want to listen to that, they can go back and pull that phone call up and get the entire contents of it. Mr. Bill O'Reilly, the shill, the recent, or most recent shill, I should say, for this administration, says he doesn't believe that. And yet Brad Thor, the author, said he's spoken to NSA representatives who have clearly indicated to him that they are storing the actual calls. Why do you think you need a hard drive the size of Giant Stadium? The NSA's own admission is that for about $300 per American citizen, they can store your entire life. Now, couple that with the new Obamacare data hub. They'll have your phone calls from the NSA. They'll have your health data from Obamacare. They'll have your income from Obamacare. They'll have your tax returns from the IRS. They'll have your photograph and your biometric ID from your willingly betrayals, from the state that willingly betrayed your security and your privacy. And they'll have all of your internet searches from their friends over at Google, AOL, Verizon, AT&T. The titans of consumer betrayal. Let me ask you something. This is actually a challenge. I want to hear one good thing that can come out of a massive dossier like that on every American. Find me one valuable purpose that will serve the best interest of that individual by government having that information. I'll bet you money you can't come up with one. Because it serves no useful purpose. What it serves is the purpose of tyrants. And when the day comes for the purge, the files will come open. The subversives, the insurgents, the patriots, the dangerous, the well-informed, their names will come out like a flood. And the purges will begin. Go ahead. You think you got a good one?
Yeah, I think I've got a good reason here, Michael. I think...
Let me hear it.
I'm sorry?
Let me hear it.
With everything like that, they can go ahead and make sure that no criminal acts can be undone, or hidden, and they'll have control of everything like that and be able to prosecute so many more people, and we'll be so much safer here, because they'll know everything there is to know about us. We can't get abducted without, them knowing about it, so everybody will be safe.
And how do you consider that to be in your best interest? Or is the sarcasm just dripping?
I wasn't thinking it was actually safer, But, I mean, this is the excuse that's going to be used, I'm sure. It's for our best interest.
Well, the simple truth is this. There is no excuse. No one can come up with a legitimate reason how or can formulate a rationale for how this is in the best interest of Americans. That's the simple truth. There's not a single person right now, in government or out, who can give you a legitimate rationale for a massive dossier built on every single American. No one. Because that kind of information, that kind of power in anyone's hands is not likely to be misused. It's guaranteed.
Always. Always. The Nazis did it with IBM's help, They couldn't have numbered all of their prisoners, kept track of them without IBM's help.
Well, they're doing it again.
Yep.
Thank you for that call. I appreciate it. You see, folks, where we are right now is a government that's not just run amok, not just slightly dangerous, not remotely dangerous. What we have is a government that has set the stage for the worst tyranny that the planet Earth has ever experienced. And it's a matter of time. It's not a question of if. Now it's only a question of when. I find it disgusting. You're listening to America's Voice Now. You can find us on the web at americasvoicenow.org or .com. You can find us at facebook.com/America's Voice. And you can find this and every other program at youtube.com/America's Voice Now. We'll be back in just a moment.
We are the Ozarks' best news talk, KBMV Birch Tree.